Hello artist, and welcome back to the art room. Mrs. Larrabee here. This week we're going to be talking about color, and I get to introduce you to one of my favorite artists. This is Alma Thomas. Mrs. Thomas has some very colorful artwork. In fact, she's quoted as saying, "Color is life," at one point. She liked to focus on color because she said it was the beauty and happiness of the world, even though things weren't always that great. Miss Thomas saw the first astronauts land on the moon. Here's one of the first pieces of artwork that I ever knew from Mrs. Thomas. It's called Starry Night and the Astronauts. And if you look at this, does it look like astronauts are a starry night? She gives the impression of the sun glinting off of the space capsule up here on the sky that was very solid in color. But it's not a literal piece of artwork in the way that she didn't literally draw something that looks like it. She would give her expression of what she saw. In fact, Miss Thomas was actually known as an expressionist artist. She was showing her thoughts in this abstract way, not a literal way. This is called Astronaut's Glimpse of the Earth. And here was how she envisioned what it must look like to see this sphere in the sky, between the atmosphere and all the colors that might show up. This one's called Blast Off, and this one's called Launch Pad. I think that her use of color is so neat, and if you've noticed, well, I want you to think for a minute. Think about what one color you've seen in these pieces of artwork so far. You can rewind the video if you need to and look again. I bet someone said blue, maybe someone said red. And then take a look at this piece of artwork. This is called The Eclipse. And this one is yellow. She used the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. These are the colors, the three main colors that make up what we call the color wheel. And we can make every other color from these colors. If you have red, yellow, and blue, you can make green, you can make purple, you can make orange, and all the shades in between. Miss Thomas focused on these bright and bold colors in her artwork. And not everything had to do with space. Here's one. This one's actually untitled. She did a lot as she looked at nature with flowers and things out her window. Miss Thomas was a teacher. She taught junior high art for over 30 years. And when she retired, she started doing this artwork and became recognized for it and started having her own art shows. And that's really when her personal art life took off. In fact, she even has some of her artwork hanging at the White House now. This piece of artwork is called Resurrection. She painted it during the 60s. And this was when it was hanging on the wall in one of the dining rooms at the White House. So we're going to be looking at shapes and color this week as we make our own Alma Thomas inspired artwork. You need one sheet of paper and a coloring supply. Your crayons would be excellent for this project. Markers work really well. If you have paint at home and you would like to use paint, this is an excellent project. Mrs. Thomas used paint in her pictures too, so you can grab your paint if you want. Think about these primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, or some other bright color. Grab your supplies and we'll get started. All right, artists, so we have our supplies. I'm going to be showing you two different things. So I have two pieces of paper, but you only need one. I did fold my paper in half. If you're using crayons or markers, you might want to fold your paper in half just because it's a lot of paper to cover. But if you're using paint, you probably want to keep a whole sheet of paper. I wanted to demonstrate a couple of different things to you, so I have a couple more supplies out than you might. I wanted to mention paint just a minute because we haven't got to talk about it a whole lot this year. If you're using paint, or if you think you might use paint sometime in the future, I just wanted to remind you, make sure you have a cup of water so that you can wash your brush, because each time you change colors, you want to wash your brush so you don't accidentally mix orange in with the pink in with the blue, and then they all become muddled. So you wash your brush, and then I have a paper towel here. I just dab it off a little, and that way I'm not dripping water on my paper, okay? So cup of water and paper towel. I'm going to be using, like I said, I'm going to be using paint, but I'm also going to be using crayon. I actually really like crayon on this artwork, so whatever you got, it's going to be working. All right, we're going to have to make our first decision now. We're going to be composing or putting together our artwork, deciding where things are going to go. Our first decision is, are we going to use the circle for our artwork, as in the eclipse? Or are we going to use lines in our artwork and stripes, like in Launchpad? I'm going to do one with circles and one with lines just so that I can show you both. but you only have to do one. All right, so I'm going to use paint to start off with here. Remember, crayon works too if you're using crayon. Decide, if you're using a circle, decide where you're going to put your circle on your artwork. I'm going to put mine down here on the bottom. I'm just making kind of a small shaped circle. And then I'm going to wash my brush in the water and dry it off a little so it's ready for the next color. All right, if you're going to do lines, I'm going to be adding my lines over here, and I'll just keep the same color. I'm going to start a line right here kind of towards the bottom. I'm going to start with these dashed lines, which is kind of like how Mrs. Thomas used. You can see her little shapes that she makes in her artwork with her paintbrush. She kind of makes these, they're kind of like rectangles or ovals, a little bit of both. All right, now we're going to go back and start adding around it. We're just going to keep adding and layering, layer, add to our artwork until we've finished and filled our whole page with color. If you see Miss Thomas, she will go around, like if she's going around her circle, she'll go all the way around with one color. Sometimes she'll do 2 or 3 stripes of the same color, making it thick. And then she'll do 1 stripe of another color. And then she'll change colors again. So you get to compose or decide how you're going to put your colors in. I'm going to switch to crayon now just so I can show you how I like to use that. Crayon's kind of neat because you can make that rectangular or oval shape pretty easy. One thing that I noticed as I've got to do artwork like this is that sometimes I rush, and I just want to remind you not to rush. Take your time, and you want to keep these little ovals or these rectangles pretty close together. If you spread them apart too much, then you have too much white and you kind of miss the color. If you notice in her artwork, you don't see a whole lot of white. I'm probably leaving mine a little further apart than I have to. I could put them closer together. All right, and now that you've gone all the way around your circle one time, you can decide, do I want another band of that color or do I want to switch? So I might go in and add another row of the same color if I really want that blue to stand out right there. All right, you get the idea. You'll just continue to go around and around, adding your layers of color. Here's an example of one that I did. I just started and I kept going out, and sometimes I did 2 rows of a color, sometimes I did only 1. All right, if you're doing your lines, you're doing more of the look of the launch pad. I'm going to use my paint just so I can show it to you a little more easily. She uses sections of color, so she might use one long line of a color and then a short line of the color right beside it. And again, I'm just using these little dashed lines. And then I'm going to wash my brush over here, dry it off on my paper towel. And then I'm going to pick up another color and I'm going to fill in the empty spaces with that color. It's fun to compose, to decide where you're going to put it. And then as you're working, I want you to think about what you're going to name your artwork. So when you're all done with your artwork, you're going to give it a name, just like Miss Thomas did. Hers were inspired by things from space and from astronauts. She also enjoyed looking out her window, and some of her other artwork has the names of flowers. So what do you think? What inspires you? What's something that you really like, that you find inspiration from? And what would you name your artwork? I can't wait to hear some of your names, some of what you think about as you're drawing and you're painting. All right, so I think you guys are ready to go and keep going on your own. I'm going to stop right there, but here's a couple of examples where I've done a little bit more, and see how I filled my whole page. Woo, that's kind of big on the screen, isn't it? My whole page with these red colors. This one's done with marker, and so I made this shape of the rectangle and then I filled it in. So keep going until you have yours all filled in too. And if you have time, send me a picture. I'd love to see your Alma Thomas inspired artwork. Don't forget to tell me the name of it too. I'll see you guys back here next week.